So, good afternoon, folks. Thank you so much being here. Let's kickstart it by, okay, let me warn you first. The good folks out here are going to question us any moment. Okay? They are not going to take your statements just like that, by face value. They will question you. You'll question them, right? Absolutely. But they would also love to learn from you. Right? So let's make it a kind of an interactive session where we all learn from each other. And let's start off by having a quick introduction and a little bit of the brand that you represent.
Hi, I'm Rini. I'm handling the brand marketing piece for Daily Objects. And luckily for me, a lot of people I met know about Daily Objects, so that does make my life easier. But a quick introduction nevertheless. We are into lifestyle accessory space. We do products like mobile cases, laptop sleeves, bags and wallets, desk organization, and work from home solutions. So yeah, we have quite a big assortment. Prior to that, I have worked with Titan and VIP Industries as a brand manager.
How many of you have heard of Daily Objects? How many of you shop from Daily Objects? How many of you are happy with Daily Objects?
I wish I could click a picture.
Thank you. I'm Mayank. I'm the CEO and the founder of Resha Bundy. We are primarily a B2B ecosystem for natural fibers. We've recently forayed into D2C with launching our own brand. What we've done in the last 2 years is save the cost on silk and cotton as a supply chain. We've been able to work through that, and we want to be able to pass on the benefit of that cost saving to the end customer by being able to give out the sustainability and transparency to you. Your Kanjivarams does not have to cost you 25,000 rupees is my tagline to that. Thank you.
Barti.
Hi everyone, I am Barti Srinivasan. I am a partner with Kani India, and I lead our work in the digital e-commerce and D2C space. Work with large organizations in the consumer goods, consumer durable space, and with several startups in the D2C e-commerce ecosystem on kind of fueling and building this growth across various category sets. I spent the last decade at Amazon India. I was a part of the launch team and also had the privilege of building Amazon's private brands business across hardlines and consumables. At that time, we didn't call it D2C, but it's probably as close to D2C as one would think about across various category sets. Excited to be here.
How many of you heard of this private brand from Amazon? What's the private brand known as? Solimo. How many of you heard of Solimo? How's the brand?
Okay, I should also click a picture maybe.
You can credit her with getting Solimo to us. That's fantastic.
Hi everyone, my name is Abhishek. I represent Nua here. Hopefully some of the women in this group have heard of us. If not, we have our work cut out. We are a D2C brand focused on women's wellness. Our core category is we started off in menstrual hygiene with India's first fully customizable sanitary pads. But since then, we've grown to multiple categories, including skincare most recently. So that's a very brief introduction about Nua. Yeah.
Perfect. And this is what I was talking about in terms of the intimate category, right? And so many brands and so many D2C startups coming up and addressing this problem. That's really been one of the biggest takeaways for me personally, right? And don't feel bad if people haven't heard of Nua. How many of you heard of Deepika Padukone? Come on, guys. How many have heard of Deepika Padukone? You want to talk about Deepika Padukone's association with Nua?
Yeah, she's an investor at Nua. She's been with us on the journey for the past year, and closely involved in some of the conversations as well. So yeah.
So you see, everyone knows Nua. Perfect. So let's start. So what we'll do is we'll try and wrap it up in about 20 minutes. So we'll be very, very brief and concise in our answers because we need to talk to the audience as well. So when I was working with Adidas, one of the major responsibilities of mine was to find a good store. And obviously, it's not just about a store, it's a list of parameters that the store needs to tick. But if I were to draw a parallel and in terms of a website, we're just focusing on the website. We're not focusing on the physical part of it. So in your individual capacity for your brands, what were the steps that you took when you wanted to start developing a website or wanted to create a website? Let's start with you.
So I think the starting step is, of course, a deep understanding of the consumer behavior that but to understand that what is the consumer coming for on my website, like what is the objective, and therefore provide the relevant product and relevant information. So the landing page should be such that the discoverability of the product is good enough. And once I know that, let's say if I have to buy a mobile case, so the key piece of information is that which brand, let's say whether it's Apple or it's Samsung, and if I'm capturing that right information and I'm able to put it out there for the users or the visitors' convenience, and for them to be able to understand, yeah, this is the product for me. And then let's say that after the brand, the next piece will be the specifications, whether it's TP. So product-related information should be dispensed in the right way. So that's another piece. And the user flow should be such that navigating on the website is quite smooth. So yeah, for us, specifically for daily objects, one of the challenges was that because we are into so many categories, bucketing them so that the consumption is easier and comprehension is easier for the visitor. So I have products from, let's say, a wallet to a wireless charger, and to be able to put everything on my website so that, again, the experience is seamless and the discoverability is good was a challenge. So we bucketed all our products, keeping in mind, so let's say, so there are products as per, there's a separate section which we call Apple products, because 60% of our traffic comes from Apple users. So that was one bucket that we created. Then home desk organization was another bucket, because we were the only ones who were giving out desk organization at that time. Then in accessories also we have a wide range of products. So accordingly, like understanding the consumer behavior and creating buckets out of it was one critical, and we did see a lot of improvement and falling down of bounce rates after that step was taken care of. And there were other smaller additions, but then again, I would let other people talk about it because of the limitation of time.
Thank you. For me, the website actually starts from understanding the user itself. Who's your user? And you would have different buckets of users, right? You might have a very large audience that you want to cater to. You might have a specific audience that you want to cater to. And what are they looking for? Now, if you're targeting a Gen X millennial, then you're probably looking at, them searching more than actually browsing through your website. Versus, my mom or somebody like her going onto my website, she would rather go into the category page. You need to define that journey very, very carefully and be able to cater to each of their needs very, very differently. And that's why there are two normal options that you will always have. Let me explore or help me explore, right? Either I will explore myself or I will need help from you to explore your category. And that's my take off.
So my takeaway from both of you is in terms of understand your TG, understand the way they will explore or search, the way you're differentiating right now, and aid in discoverability, right? Abhishek?
No, I think both are really relevant points. I think for us, when we started, and I think one thing to keep in mind in D2C is your website is your brand, right? That is the brand, that is the experience. So I think a lot of thought has to go into, what are we really, who are we serving? I think the TG point that you all talked about. And I think just taking that and making that, thinking about it from an experience perspective, because, when a customer, especially in our category, which is a, intimate category, and when we started off, we were a single product company. We had only sanitary pads, right? So we had to make it welcoming in the sense that, we had to talk about, having conversation around it even before we talked about the product, right? So for us, it was all about making sure that, so we thought through the experience a lot, and the entire user journey was built around that. And I also believe that, when you think of website, I would also look at it from, the journey doesn't just end at the customer making the purchase. It's also about what happens after, and really making sure that you're with them through the different touch points is really what's really important. So, yeah.
Sure. So Bharti, you've worked with obviously a lot of clients, and when you work with them, and how do you help them address this? Because it's a confusing area, right? Sure. The moment someone wants to start up on a website, there are so many options, and like we were discussing, service providers like us, we really don't make lives easier, right? We confuse them further. Sure. So how do you really walk a client through this whole process?
Sure. So I think, to my mind, success on any D2C platform hinges on two different paths, right? So one is customer backwards, fundamentally mapping the customer's entire journey, pre-purchase even. There are categories like appliances, for example, where nearly 2/3 of customers research for 2 to 3 weeks before a buy is made. So starting and mapping, putting ourselves really in the customer's shoes, that can't be overemphasized, and saying pre-purchase, during the purchase journey, and then post-purchase, like Abhishek was just pointing out, mapping each step and then working backwards from what they are looking for at that point in time, and specifically looking at in each of these touch points. So customers, let's say, who are offline, who are still new to our brand, or customers who are on marketplaces like an Amazon or a Flipkart, how do we talk to them? How do we target them? What are they seeking to understand in a brand like us? And once customers on the website, do you want to break that down into the landing page, into if you have a deals page, into each individual product page, post-checkout? So the experience that a customer has at each of these points matters, and what they are looking for, purely working backwards from that, even if it means incremental investments in the short term, doing the right thing for the customer then, and post-purchase on services, especially if there are returning customers, how do we kind of talk to them and serve them? So I would focus more on serving these customers at every touch point and communicating with them, even more than targeting them. Targeting will be an output of this. That's one pillar. The second pillar is fundamentally, while we talk a lot about targeting customers and website experience, I think it all boils back down to customer fundamentals, right? The right selection and the right assortment, a large range, automatically tells customers about what the brand stands for. I was just talking to someone before this, and we realized that customers start off on, let's say, even on a marketplace in the morning, and in the next 5 hours, they have a point of view on the brand they are looking for, or even a brand that they may not have been looking for, if they just find, the right large assortment of selection from that particular brand. And then fundamentals of in-stock availability. This is a very, very oft overlooked point, but if customers see the products but they don't find it available, especially in quick commerce, for example, or in grocery or food and grocery supply chains, they end up having a point of view that this brand is not really available or serious. So the point I'd like to make is the way we work with clients especially is to focus on the customer journey, and the parallel track is to look at each and every input, fundamentally selection, on in-stock, and on pricing, the end customer price, fundamentally, and then the overall customer experience, be it services, installations, warranty, and all of that in a very thorough and structured way.
I fundamentally agree with you, but then I have a basic area where probably I'll disagree with you is in terms of the assortment range, right? Now that's a function of what the D2C brand is capable of. I mean, there are brands who could probably be just having 3 or 4 or 5 SKUs at the max. They can still have a great website, correct? So I mean, to have a large assortment is not necessarily an absolute necessity, right?
No, I agree with you, Siju. So I think it depends on the category you are in, right? Okay. If you look at a beauty and personal care, then typically customers prefer to, what we've seen clients do is to have a large assortment so that encourages trials and so on and so forth. But it boils down to, like I said, the first part is the customer journey as to what you're offering and what the brand stands for the customer. And if it's just 2 to 3 SKUs and it's a niche and you want to focus on that, then comes the inputs piece.
Okay. So far, any questions from any one of you? Any questions? So we're just getting warmed up. So kind of lay the lay of the land in terms of what you should be looking at before you get into actually crafting a good website. Any questions? No? Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah, so how much information is too much information for a website? Because what happens when a new customer visits a website? We need to grab his attention with something differentiated that stands out. But if you were to look at copywriting guidelines by Joseph Sugarman, etc., they say everything that a customer can think of has to be mentioned somewhere on the product page. But the flip side of that is that with attention span dropping now, what happens is people, if there's too much of information, they'll just exit the website. So what's your take on that?
So, I'll use that question as a lead on to the next section of our discussion, which is in terms of content. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it all comes down to content. How much content is the right content, right? Can you show me just one picture of a watch and you expect to sell it to me at 35K? Will I, as a customer, be happy? Or, need I show 10 pictures of it? Do I need to show the whole story behind it? Because, it kind of contrasts with the whole storytelling philosophy that we've been talking about the last 1.5 days in terms of how storytelling is so very important in building that relationship. So from a content perspective, how much content is enough content?
So again, from what I know, there's no definite answer, but I can tell you what has worked for us. So let's say if it's a tech product, I know that what are the 4 key things that the customer looks for before buying it. Let's say if I have to sell a wireless charger. So I will make sure that the first thing along with the product that the consumer or the visitor sees are those 4 USPs or clear reasons why the customer should buy it. That is a very tech product because it has to fulfill a certain function. Versus if I have to sell a lifestyle product, I need to build some story around it.
So category-wise,
Yes.
depending on what the consumer says,
Yes.
you will deliver content.
No,
Yeah.
it does depend on the category very, very specifically. If you're, let's suppose you're a sustainable brand and you're not talking about it, people are not interested. You can't just show me picture and say that I'm a sustainable brand. It won't work, right? So at the end, the content strategy would have to be dependent on what category you are in, how are you trying to cater to the audience, and also who, again, coming down to the same point, who's your target audience? If you are trying to target the top 1% of India, then you have to probably be minimalistic and talk more sensibly to them, and probably talk with more technology to them in terms of like when we sell sari today and when it goes as a package to you, we ship that out with a QR code. That's also communication, right? Now, what happens is when you scan that QR code, I am telling you who was the farmer, who was the yarn manufacturer, who was the weaver, where it generated from. I'm giving you that entire experience. And I'm telling you how to drape that sari and how to, keep it safeguarded so that it can become a heirloom for you.
So what you're saying is that content can be delivered either in terms of visible or a led to content, right? And hence also maintain the storyline.
Correct.
Okay. Barti, your views on this?
Yes, so typically, so I would just work backwards from, if you were to buy this product from a website, what is the content that you will need to make that buying decision? And what we have seen is, while it's category dependent, yes, there are 2 types of categories where content becomes all the more relevant. One is an aspiration-led category, like fashion, for instance, where you would like to see how this product would look on you and visualize, like visualization-driven. Furniture, sometimes, home decor, all of these categories have that aspiration element to it of the visualization. The other type of category where content is important to help a customer in the buying decision is technical product types. For example, if you're buying appliances, if you're buying something that either is at a very high price, where the fear of buying is higher, you want to make sure the product looks right, and where the touch and feel element that you would have traditionally had, where you can try the product, touch and feel it, there's lower risk, lower safety concerns in buying it, technically oriented product types. These are the 2 categories where I think content, even if overdone, is okay to err on the safe side. But there is a gray area in between in, for example, a personal care or a food and groceries type product types, where whatever content a customer, whatever the check boxes that a customer might have before making a buying decision, giving them that much information, I think minimalistically would be meaningful, unless they ask for more, which is a content click-through.
Yeah, I think that's a very difficult question to answer in a very definitive manner because, how much content is right content is very subjective. But I hope, you've got a sense in terms of how from a category perspective and from a target audience perspective, things could change. And I quite like the idea of, leading to, if you want to know more, you're welcome to know more, provided you have the right, content available with you. Now, obviously, before you put content out, you need to create that content. And creating content is not an easy job as easy as it sounds because A, you need someone who's capable enough of creating it. And content means file size. File size means space. Space means technology cost. And technology cost means, then you start doubting yourself. Right? So it's a domino effect there.
Technology cost also means that you can get Amazon credits and still go for free.
Perfect. Perfect. And
it's not necessary that you start when you're putting the budget out and you're thinking, okay, I need to start my D2C brand and my technology cost would be X.
Perfect.
It's not necessary. There are options available out there.
True.
Where Amazon's giving you credit, eBay is giving you credit. There are
Correct.
people who are ready to give you credit. You have investors, ask them directly. They will have credits with them. They will help you.
I think that's good nugget of information, right? And I think what you need to understand out here is, the technology providers also have a good set of people on their side who understand business, right? So when they structure out licensing programs, they're not really a bad set of people, kind of setting something up for myself, but we do understand. we do understand the nuances of the business, the break points of a business, right? And we really don't, I mean, no technology provider would necessarily want to break business for 1 year's budget to be achieved, right? So that's from a content perspective. But do you have content writers within your team, or do you?
Yeah, we have everything in-house.
Same thing, in-house. We do use some agencies, but that's primarily for photo shoots and videographs. That's it.
In-house, yeah.
Okay. And see, one of the, I'm not sure about all of you, but one of the most irritating elements for me, and I've observed this in the past few months, is the moment I log on to a website, I have these small boxes that keep popping up, right? Do you want a 10% discount? Give me your email ID. Do you want to chat? And the chat can get really, really irritating. Now, how important is it for a consumer to land on an absolutely clean page? I understand that chat is important, to get a person's email ID is important, but I'm sure it can come later on, right?
So I think a couple of things, right? Since we talked about content, I just want to add one point and then maybe a good segue into the question you asked. Is I think content is all about building trust, right? You got to build trust for a new D2C brand. It's about building, first of all, trust. Do I trust this brand? Do I trust their products? You got to get through a couple of hurdles before you even get them to buy the product. So I think a lot of the work actually goes in terms of the information point that was brought up around too much versus too little. I think it's really about making sure that you give them sufficient information to really trust. Okay, this brand knows what they're talking about, and a lot of this is also about what happens after, right? From a product perspective. And on the content side, I also just want to say that it's customers. I mean, when we look for a new brand, what do? You'd go to Google, you'd probably search for them saying, hey, are they even legit? I mean, we were just chatting earlier about this, that you might want to go check out Amazon, or you might want to. So how does a customer look for information? They don't just look on your website. They might go, they'd probably do a Google search. They'll say, hey, is this a funded company or not? I mean, we get these kind of questions all the time. So I think the point is that information is not just on your website, but outside as well. So you've got to figure out a way to organize that. That's probably a good segue in terms of the question you asked, which is around how do you make that experience work? I mean, I certainly believe that it depends on where the customer is in the journey. And I think, Barti talked about pre-purchase, purchase, and post-purchase, and that's exactly how we look at it as well. In the pre-purchase journey, you want to give them the right kind of information and only be there to answer questions if they need some more questions. And especially in categories like ours, where there may be a lot of questions about the products, you need to be able to give that information upfront to customers. But on the actual purchase page, you want to make it as clean as possible, because you want to keep it, why does Amazon have a one-click, sort of checkout and all of those sort of things, right? Because you want to make that as seamless and quick as possible. So I believe it's really about making sure that you make that distinction. So
absolutely, and I guess you get iterative over a period of time, and you better on things that you do. How many of you here are building a website right now for your D2C brand, or are planning to build one? Okay, any questions so far? Yes, sir. Please keep it brief.
How soon one should have a content team in-house for a startup that is just starting? Is it a good investment to be done early enough, or should it be done at a later stage and be dependent on an agency initially?
See, it's again dependent on what you're building. If you have one product, you can write it for yourself. If you have hundreds of products coming out, then at least have the strategy of the content defined by you before you actually give it out to the agencies, otherwise they'll juice you up, for sure. So make sure that you're controlling some narrative at your end, rather than allowing an agency to kind of control that narrative for you.
I agree with that. I think it's more about making sure content is available. I think building a presence on the web, right? So you have to be there. You have to make that happen, and not just on your site, as I said. You've got to also look at it from a broader perspective of social media and all of that as well. So.
And I think you need to have, to quickly answer your question, I think the story, that what the brand stands for, what the brand is about, is very crucial right from the get-go. And I think all the people here would agree to it. And while it might not, you don't necessarily have to have someone to do it for you, even if you're able to do it, but it is critical. Because for anyone who's coming to your website, they would want to know, given that they don't know about you. It's like introducing yourself, right? So you need to have at least that kind of a story about your brand. So content is critical from the onset, is what I think.
Yeah, at the very minimum, I would recommend that if you're able to ask the question on what is the purchase barrier for the customer. if the content that you're going to provide the customer is going to help the customer cross that barrier, then that's a must-have. And everything else will be good to have as you go along. So that's probably where I would always have a tiebreaker around what makes it work for a customer, at the very least.
And the way I've seen it is D2C brands today are built with a lot of passion from the founders. If there's anyone who knows the product or the service, it's you, right? So you will obviously be the genesis of the content that we're talking about. Then how do we make it more optimum? How do we make it more flashy? That's phase 2. But to start off with, I think you're the master of your own content, so, right? Now, let's talk, yeah, sure.
When the customer comes first time to the website, so he goes to the add to cart page and, the checkout page, then he will get his mobile number, email ID and everything, it is good. Then we can do the remarketing, retargeting and everything. Is it okay when he comes for the first time on the website, on the first page, the product page or the landing page, we ask his mobile number and get a OTP, send him an OTP and get an authentication. Does this, disturb his privacy? Or is it okay if we ask him on the first go only, before he goes to the last page?
Let's look at the flip side of it. Would you give me the number
That's
of
my
yours,
question.
yourself?
Yeah, that is the
And
question.
will you feel that it's an invasion to your privacy? And if you are feeling it,
Yeah.
your customer is feeling it the same way. It's about, making sure that you want certain information from the customer before he makes the purchase or when he lands into your website. But how do you capture that information is also part of your content and communication strategy, right? And the flow that you define. You can have segmented flow, which basically defines that, okay, I will ask for a certain information, or I'll start, having a communication with the customer so that he starts to, trust me, he starts to have conversation with me, and then I will eventually get to where I want to get to in terms of the data that I want from him, right? So that's completely dependent on whether the customer has trusted you enough. Like we work in B2B space as well, right? And across the board, we work with farmers. Asking for mobile number and do KYCs with them, I have had the hard time understanding as to how do I get to that, right? It takes time to understand that customer, what he wants, when will he get comfortable with you, will he get comfortable first transaction, second transaction, will he get comfortable on your category page or your search page? And if you are projecting like Apple, then probably he'll get comfortable the day one with you.
No, if suppose add to cart, he does an add to cart, and before that filling the form and everything, it is for a new brand especially, So after add to cart, can we give that option, please at least give your mobile number, we send you an OTP and get an authentication? Is it for a new brand I'm talking about?
See, for a new brand as well, right?
Yeah.
You need to define what the customer experience would be at that point in time. And most of the time, if you go through the experience map, empathy mapping and experience mapping, you will realize when you land onto the homepage, your experience is the highest level. You're actually smiling. When you go to the category page and this is a specific example I'll give you. You were on your Facebook feed and you saw a Reebok shoe. The ad said 70% off. You clicked on that, you went into Flipkart or whichever website, right? You realized that 70% off was only applicable in one SKU. Rest of the category page or the listing page had no bearing on it, which means that it was at 30%, 20% off. And then all of a sudden your emotions dipped. At that point in time, if you're asking me for any information, I'm not going to give it to you. So you need to make sure that I'm feeling happy through and through with you to be able to provide you that experience. And the second part is how Policy Bazaar has cracked it. If you look at Policy Bazaar, when you go to and you're basically going to a term loan or a life insurance, you select that category, you start going through the products and you're putting your information, and then you abandon. There will be a call made to you in 1 minute's time.
Yes.
Definitely. And they will say, the only thing that this guy will say is, sir, should I help you get through my process? Because my process is complicated and I know this. There are ways to get around things.
And obviously to complete a transaction, you need an address and you need a mobile number these days, right?
Yeah, of course,
So,
yes.
those come in as mandatory fields in a sense, and consumers today give it.
Yeah.
But what you need to do is have a science to progressive profiling. It's called progressive profiling. right? Because at the checkout page, if you ask me how many pets I have, I'll probably not answer that. But if you ask me for my number and for my address, which is necessary for the items to be delivered, I'll probably give it. Right? So we're running short of time here, and there were two aspects that I wanted to kind of touch upon, but I think I'll touch upon one of them. So when you see a good photograph, right, on social media or anyone, or if someone shares a good photograph with you, what's the first question that you ask that person? Sorry? No, it's a photograph. Right? No, it's not a product photograph. It's just, let's say, a scenery photograph, or who clicked it, and suppose if we know who clicked, then what's the next question? Kaun sa camera? Right? It's as if the camera is responsible for that photograph to be clicked. Same is the case here. So when you're talking of a website, if it's a nice website, is the question which technology, or is the question how did you come to it?
See, when you're talking about the UI aspect of it, there are various layers to technology, right? UI is one layer, the front-end layer, which is what the consumer is more interested in. He does not care what your backend looks like and feels like. You may have a very shitty backend, but if you're giving out a great experience upfront, then I'm fine, because I don't have to look at your algorithm as to what you've done. Why should I know as to how Facebook is retargeting me?
No, you're talking from a consumer perspective. For people out here who are brand new D2C brands and who want to bring up a website, is the technology something that they should be worried about right from day one?
See, if it's dependent on how soon are you going to scale and what scale are you going to pick up. If you feel that the product has and you've done enough research or sampling for your product and you know there is a market out there, you should look at the backend technology. You should have a technology advisor, if not a CTO with you. But if there is a CTO and a co-founder with you who can effectively take that over, it's one big headache gone off, because then they can scale that product fast as and when the need arises.
Yeah. To add to that, so the one word answer to that is yes. Let's all be very honest about this, right? This is fundamentally a digital platform where technology is going to be the make or break. If you get on a website, irrespective of whether you have the greatest products or not, the speed, the latency, and all of those things, the performance of the website dictates the store experience you have. Right? We wouldn't walk into any store irrespective of the best products they carry, even if there's going to be the smallest of irritants out there in the store, in a physical store. Right? Either if, to your point, Siju, on people constantly messaging you on chat, that to me is a person in the store who's constantly walking behind me and following up with me and asking me what I want. When all I want is a space and the clarity and the right organization of the website, from the right browse experience to the right discoverability experience. And all of that ultimately, and the payments experience, every single part of this is powered by technology. And if there's going to be the smallest of delays in any step of the process, that's going to be a make or break for the brand that I'm trying to build, especially in the early days. So I would think technology is the bedrock of all of D2C play, of all digital channels. Yeah. And there's no running away from that. And I would invest in it today, over-invest in it today, if I'm looking at a long-term business.
Thank you. Sure. Now, we'll just come on to one last aspect in which I want you to address this. So when a D2C brand plans to start and wants to set up a website, the first thing that you'll probably ask yourself is, will customers trust me? Right? Now, I was very sheepishly admitting to Rini out here that, daily objects, neither my 18-year-old son nor I kind of, trusted in the first go, because I've never heard of it. So Rini, how do you tackle this issue of trust? Because I'm sure that's an issue. I mean, that's something that, you need to sort. So how do these folks sort it out?
First of all, I think the starting point is to understand where is the mistrust coming from. And it can be, there can be different reasons depending on which category. So addressing and understanding where is the reason of that mistrust coming from. Is it a bad experience, or is it because the perception is such? And again, both these factors can be addressed in different ways. So if it's bad experience, you have a customer experience team who will then build processes and understand that how do we, make the experience better, and how do we address it and set up, and work accordingly. And the second piece is having the right perception. So sometimes a a brand doesn't seem very trustworthy. And that is because the brand hasn't talked about factors or built their story in such a way that it comes across as trustworthy, right? Or let's say if I am selling a tech product and for me to be able to sell that product, I should have some tech credentials, right? Some backing. So I need to talk more about what expertise or what is my right to exist in that category to the consumer. And thereby, that piece I can address with the right content, with the right communication, and talking more about it with the consumer so that I'm able to address it and build that kind of imagery in the consumer's mind.
So will it be helpful if before hitting the consumer with a website as the first point of engagement, is it better for the brand to start speaking to the consumer through various forums, through articles and so on and so forth?
Sorry, I just wanted to add to it. Basically, what she was talking about is if you're already a set brand, you're anyways going through that process reiteratively.
No,
right?
we're talking of a new brand, absolutely.
But if you're just launching today, nobody will trust you, right? Why should I trust you? There is no trust on you or my brand or for whatever reason, right? Now, what is one thing that you can do? Most of us are very, very hell-bent on, I need a website, I need an app before I start approaching the consumer. Why? You have other digital means, start approaching, start building out the trust, create the champions for yourself, use those champions to start building out the trust initially. That's what effectively works, right? You're not spending marketing dollars on it. You have your own circle, your mom has her circle, your dad might have his own circle. Why not propagate from there? Why not start from there?
And I think one example that comes to my mind is how nothing is going about their branding and content piece. I'm sure everybody would be aware, and the way they are talking about the technology and the way they stand and what they stand for. I think it's really interesting because they have been talking very transparently about the tech and how they are implementing it, and then thereby talking about and thereby bringing in testimonials from the consumer. Okay?
Sure.
Whether the consumer has liked the product, what is the consumer saying? So that's another piece, to add validations and reviews from your existing consumers. Because again, word of mouth certainly helps.
Perfect. So, this is one subject I think we can spend the whole day on, right? And there's so many nuances to it, but unfortunately, we'll have to cut this short here. So once again, thank you so much for being such a patient audience. Thank you folks for all the insights that you gave us, and obviously they are around, so if there's any question that you need to bounce off with them, please feel to do that. Can I have a big round of applause for the audience, please?